All right, everybody, welcome to this episode of Thundercast. Today we have Suki Sodi, and she is with Professional Selection Incorporated. So Suki is going to break the thunder today. Not only does she have two businesses that I know about, but she's also a personal coach. Suki, why don't you tell us a little bit about your business?
Hey, thanks for having me, Doug. So yes, Professional Selection Inc. That is my business that I launched. So it's in the staffing industry. I launched that way back when in England. To date, we are based here in Toronto. We recruit solely for the recruitment industry. So I'm a staffing business and my clients are staffing businesses. I've never always done it like that. Prior to that, I specialized in data securities. So today as a business, we've recruited in 18 different countries. And then we have the other arm, which is Elite Global Recruiters, and that is our training and coaching arm, again, for the recruitment industry. And to date, we've coached people in 6 different countries. And that's the baby, because that came out of the global pandemic, the shutdown. So that's when Elite Global Recruiters was born. So I've never worked in another industry. I've never worked in anything other than recruiting. Yes, whilst I was at college and things like that, I had retail jobs, but as a career, I've only ever worked for 2 companies. And after that, I've been self-employed ever since. So that's me kind of in a nutshell.
How many years is that have you been self-employed?
You're not meant to ask me that question because that reveals my age. I launched 28 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh. Wow. So you've just enjoyed this massive run of success. So what made you decide to go into business for yourself?
So when I came into recruiting, okay, so I remember being in England, going into a staffing agency looking for a job, right? And the woman said to me, "What do you want to do?" I was like, "I have no idea what I want to do, but I can tell you what I don't want to do. I don't want to be stuck behind a desk. I don't want to be a typist." I just gave her this laundry list of things I didn't want to do. And I was like, I just need change. I need variety. I need excitement. And she was like, think about recruiting. I was like, okay. And that's how I fell into the industry. And I worked 8 years for a entrepreneur who'd launched a staffing agency. In fact, they'd launched, I think if I remember correctly, 6 branches at the same time.
Wow.
So my first career was working for an entrepreneur. I've never actually, that's a bit of a lie. I worked for them for about 8 years, burnt out, then thought I'll go and get a normal job in the corporate world. So went and done I think it was about 9 months with another staffing agency, but more corporate. Doug, I was bored senseless. I was just like, oh, it just wasn't for me. So what do? I decided, well, why can't I be an entrepreneur? That's kind of it.
Was it hard? Like, because you're talking in England in the mid 90s, right? Was it hard to start a business? I mean, it's easy to incorporate, but in terms of starting out, finding your clientele, finding people to do the staffing, was that hard?
Oh yeah, because you had to pick up the damn phone, right? You had to communicate, you had to talk to people. There was, God, my age, no social media, there was no LinkedIn, no Facebook, no nothing, right? So your brand was the brand you had built with people. And the only way you were building your brand for the most part was dialogue like this, right? Actually talking to people. So it was hard, but I think it's a different kind of hard now. I don't think it's any easier. I just think it's a different kind of hard. But it was because we didn't have the systems we have now, the software that we have now, all of that stuff, right? So it was hard, and I think it's still hard today, but it's a different kind of hard.
Yeah, I agree. When I look at it, there are so many things now that when I started out, I wish were present. I mean, I'd been able to grow a lot faster. But that also assumes that I knew then what I know now about other
Yep.
processes, right? To leverage that. But I look at young entrepreneurs and I can see them growing so fast because it's just so easy to reach people. If you have a product and you're consistent, and because it's easy to reach people, I think you can grow really fast. Yeah. What
Yeah.
what made you, what was the moment that you just said, you know what, I'm going to start my own business? Was it because you were excited about doing it? Or did you get frustrated? Was like, did you just hate someone that you worked for? Did you see all the money someone else was making? What was that moment?
I think I like being in recruiting, people when they're looking for another job, they're either running to something or they're running from something. Okay. And I've never thought of it like this, but I was doing exactly the same. I was running from that extreme boredom at that company. I was like, it's got to be more to this. I remember because having worked 8 odd years for entrepreneurs, you had an idea and we talked about it. And sometimes like 99 of them were just like daft, but that one, and they're open to thinking different ways of thinking. And hey, let's try it. If it doesn't work, decisions were made a lot faster. And then you come into the corporate world and I get it. I get why it is. You have an idea and it goes up the chain and it's lost steam. You hear 6 months later,
Right.
right? So I just remember being so bored, and I guess I was running away from that boredom, and I still crave that entrepreneurial piece, but honestly, it was burnout. I could have quite easily rung them up and said, guys, will you take me back? And I'm 99.999% certain they absolutely would have taken me back. But it would have gone back to that burnout, crazy hours type of thing. So that's when I was just like, you know what? I've got a laptop, I've got a phone, I've got space. Do it for yourself.
How long did it take you to start building a sustainable business where you could live on it?
It took a while. I
Yeah.
won't lie. It took a while. And in hindsight, did it take a while because of stuff that I just didn't know at that time? And I think that's part of it. I'll give you one of the, and I'll give you an example. So I was working from home. Okay. So I was like, hey, why pay rent? Work from home. And after a while, I realized I'm not really working the way I was working when I was employed in an office. I was focused, right? So what I found was I'd be like, damn it, I'm just going to go and put a load in the washing machine. Now, whilst I'm there, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go and grab a cup of tea. Oh, you know what? I really deserve a break now. I'm going to go and sit outside for 5 minutes. There's never 5 minutes, right? So I quickly realized I need that discipline, that structure. So I just went into serviced offices. So I think I would have started generating revenue, consistent revenue sooner had I realized that about myself.
I think that's true with everybody. Like if we knew the mistakes that we made, or the that we get distracted, or all the things that get in our way, like, oh, I wish I knew that sooner. I think everyone says that.
Hmm. And it's funny because I'm now at that place. I mean, look, 25, 30 years later, I finally get to that place where I'm like, you know what? You're making the best decision with the information you have, right?
Right.
And then we deal with the consequences, be it positive, be it negative, right? But make the decision, do something. That's what I'm always saying to myself, do something.
See, there's the coach in you right there. So here's the big question, right? Because I think about this all the time. Do you think anyone can be an entrepreneur, or do you think it's a breed of person? That
I think it's a breed of person.
people are born that way?
Yeah. I don't know if they're born that way, but they definitely have something that can be nurtured. Okay. Can be nurtured. But I do not believe everyone can be an entrepreneur. Now, actually, I'm going to back up a second. Let's define what a successful entrepreneur is, because that's going to be different for everybody, right?
Right.
So there may be that entrepreneur that's like, you know what, as long as I'm making 10 grand a month, personal income, 10 grand, I don't want to hire people. I just want to make sure, because then I can do this, bring my kids up, do whatever. Then I guess that's a successful entrepreneur.
I think
But
that's
if you,
pretty close to it.
yeah, I think then that's a successful entrepreneur. But if you do that and you're like, you know what, I want to do this and I want to do this and I want to do this, yet you're still not getting out of your basement type, so to speak. You're not picking up the phone and talking to people. Are you really designed to be a true entrepreneur?
Right. I wonder, because I don't have an answer for that question myself, because I think about that all the time. I think that there's usually an event in someone's life that says, you know what, I don't want to work for someone anymore, or I want to make some real money, or I'm tired of people getting in my way. Like something happens and they're like, you know what, I'm going to do this myself. Right. It's like,
I'm going to disagree slightly there, right? Not all entrepreneurs are making money.
Oh, well, because I think it's a process though, right?
Is it a process? No,
It's a learning process.
It's a learning process, but also we know organizations who shall name nameless, where everyone is like, oh my God, I'm doing this and this and this and this, right? And then when you get to talk to them, they're a starving entrepreneur. But the whole, and I guess that comes back to, and it's going to take us down a different rabbit hole, right?
Right.
But just the whole social media hunger, that look how great my life is, right? But you peel back the layers and you actually end up talking to some of these individuals, they don't even know how they're paying next week's bill.
Right. And well, I think that goes back to your previous point, right? Is what makes a successful entrepreneur, right? So if someone thinks that being a successful entrepreneur is about image, well, if that's what they're going for. But I really think that at the end of the day, if you're an entrepreneur, you're a business owner, and business is about making profit, right?
Yep.
So if you define it that way, but I totally concur with that assessment. There are a lot of people out there that are just waving the flag. Look at me, look how great I'm doing. And then you find out there's nothing really behind that flag.
Yeah.
Right.
And you know what? If that's your definition of entrepreneur, okay, right? If that's what somebody genuinely wants. But I think the reason I say this is because I don't believe everybody can be a successful entrepreneur in the sense that they're making money ethically. Let me add that bit, right? They don't have to be a billionaire. I know some amazing entrepreneurs that are just servicing their local area. Okay, they're doing a fantastic job, and to me, that's a successful entrepreneur.
Right.
Right. So you don't have to be this multi-millionaire, billionaire. That's not everybody's definition, I guess, right? But I personally go back to, I don't think everybody is born to be an entrepreneur. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel that way sometimes, but I do know a lot of people that set out, failed, but they grew, right? That's where the personal growth is.
Yes.
Right? And you can't separate being an entrepreneur from personal growth. Like eventually, I mean, some people may turn out to be very successful right away, but to get to the next level, it doesn't matter who you are, how much money you're making, you have got to grow, right? Because
absolutely,
we're in our own way.
Yeah. Now, to me, if that entrepreneur that launched, failed, launched again, failed, that, and then was successful, as long as what they will, because they're never really a failure, right? There's in this situation, if they were doing everything and it just wasn't happening, they need to tweak their product, they need to tweak it, but they're not sitting there watching Netflix, for example, right? Then you're right. So that's somebody that's born to be an entrepreneur. They're just figuring out their path.
Right.
Right. Here we've just had Ontario government have just announced some legislation for our industry. And one of the things that we've found out July the 1st is you got to be licensed. And one of the things is you got to put $25,000 into a bank account for a GIC, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then you'll get your license. No, as long as you meet other criteria. January the 1st, if you're not licensed, you have to cease trading, making placements in Ontario. I have been speaking to so many individuals that have either just started their own business, or they have been working from their home, making a good living for them, but they don't have that $25,000.
Right.
Vast majority of them said, we're closing the business. Right now, I know everybody has different circumstances and stuff like that. And my kind of take on that is, without getting political, as an entrepreneur, you're going to get hit with other stuff, right? You're going to get hit with other stuff. In this particular case, I'm talking about Bill 27. Tomorrow it's going to be something else.
It's always going to be a crisis.
Yeah, there's always a crisis, right? Now, I get it. This suddenly was dropped on us, right? So 25 grand, a large chunk of money. So I totally get why individuals are fearful and thinking, you know what, I'm shutting shop. I'm going to go and do something else. But something is always going to come down the line, right? And a true entrepreneur is going to be looking at it and saying, okay, how do I get through this? What do I do to get through this? What do I have to do to get through this? Is it going to be frigging painful? Jesus, yes. Right? It's painful.
Right.
I'm feeling the pain with my coaching clients at the moment because they're in this situation through no fault of their own. But I'll say what I say to them. Tomorrow's going to be something else. So it's that self-employed entrepreneur, for lack of a better word, resilience that we have to build as well. You got to build that, because you can't be an entrepreneur and at the second hurdle be like, oh, not doing this. Now, actually, I'm going to contradict myself. If at that first hurdle you're like, oh God, I'm not cut out for this, then I think that's a really good, valuable lesson, right? Because that's learning. So I know I keep saying this, I just don't think everyone's born to be an entrepreneur.
I think, I think some people definitely shy away from it. Like they look at the idea of it. But I think you just illustrated very clearly one of the biggest barriers to entry to being an entrepreneur is all the unexpected expenses, or just government, all the taxes and the licensing, right, and the prerequisites. And so many people get so excited and they get into it, but most people don't have $25,000 to start a business with, let alone take it and just put it somewhere
100%,
and never be able to start it. So that barrier to entry is enormous. And I think, government does, business owners or wannabe entrepreneurs a huge disservice.
Yeah.
There's just so much in people's way to get started. It's easy just to get overwhelmed and want to quit. I mean, you have to have, I think, that survival instinct, like, I'm not going to quit, right? I mean, among other things, there's definitely more qualities you need, right? Because you're going to make good decisions, because if you don't want to quit and you can't make good decisions, you're going to go bankrupt pretty quick as well.
Yeah.
But you definitely have to have that. Okay, another challenge. All right, how do I address it? What are the ways? Do I know someone else who's addressed this challenge? How did they do it? Like, you have to get the information, figure out a plan, and execute.
100%. And where's the learning in that, right? So what have I learned in this? Because the good days do not last, right? Those fun days, good days, happy days do not last. But equally, the bad days do not last, right? So it's like, how am I going to navigate through this? That's something I'm working with a lot of my coaching clients on, helping them navigate through this. Because the law's the law, right? As it stands, unless something changes, the law is the law. You got to get compliant. But I think the other piece that I would say to anyone listening and wanting to become an entrepreneur, they're going out. Often when you're starting out, you're like, okay, I need a bank account. What's my company name? What's my website? What's this? What's that? Which is all great stuff. You need to do that. Get yourself a damn good accountant and a damn good lawyer right at the beginning. Right at the beginning, get yourself a really good accountant, get yourself a really good lawyer, tax lawyer, because if you paint the vision for them of what your business, who you will be when you're 10 years older type of thing, they're going to make sure you're set up correctly.
Right.
It's a mistake I made. It's a mistake I made when I
I
moved
think
to
everyone
Canada.
makes that. Everyone makes that. And that's, no one who's been on the podcast so far has made that point yet. But you're right. I mean, most people get in, money out, they pay their taxes when they don't realize there's ways of sheltering their money from taxes so that they can invest it and make more money in other ways. That's a really good suggestion.
But that as well, but also when you've set up business A, business B, and then you've got to a stage where you've got to be like really, really extra smart when it comes to tax, because else tax man's going to take it all, right? You're then going to a lawyer and you're saying, okay, what do I do? And they're having to pretty much dismantle how you set things up. That's a lot of money. Right? It's a lot of money. So one of the things I always say is get a really good accountant, even if you're only talking to that accountant once a quarter. Right? And you're doing your own bookkeeping, or you got somebody else doing your bookkeeping, whatever. Make sure you have that conversation, because they're going to see stuff you're not seeing.
Right.
Right. But also, if I look at it right now, and I think the pandemic definitely hasn't helped, but going back to your question earlier about, is it harder to do business now or back then? And I said it's kind of like hard is hard. It's a different kind of hard, because now, in the past, you wanted something, you wanted to talk to somebody, pick up the phone, there they are. All right, especially if you're selling business to business, you rang, if you got their direct line number, you rung that, you rung the main switchboard, the receptionist puts you forward and things like that. Well, that's not so easy to do these days. Okay. But the people I see winning, and I'll only speak for the industry I service, which is the staffing industry, right? Those individuals that are still picking up the phone, trying to get numbers, trying to connect with people, and finding different ways to be able to get hold of somebody's number and talk to them and things like that, they're the ones that are going to win. They're the ones that are winning.
Right.
Those that are sitting back saying, well, I sent them an email 2 weeks ago, they're not winning.
I agree.
Right? Because
100%.
you have to make your phone ring. And the only way your phone is going to ring in your business, if you do something that's going to create it to ring. It doesn't magically ring by an email, doesn't make your phone ring. Or certainly doesn't make it ring enough, right? As you can tell, I'm one of those people that still believes in the old school relationship piece. Right? You can't systemize everything. You can't automate everything. Certainly in my world, you can't. And that's where they need you, right? Help them get their security sorted out.
That my industry is, it's funny. So I think we're going to go through another set of lockdowns. I suspect because they're already instituting mask mandates again in certain places in the country. And so that's, for me, I don't want it because it's bad for the country, it's bad for the world, it's bad for the economy. But for me, I get so much more busy because everyone works from home and there's so many more threats. And I mean, I can't begin to tell you how much money I made during the pandemic. it is mind-boggling. Like I never saw it coming. I never
No,
saw it coming. I was, everyone else is, I have no work, and I'm like, I am flat out.
but if you think about it, right? Like I have been through many, many recessions. Okay. Nothing compared to the lockdown, because I've never seen the world lockdown,
Right.
right? You don't think that happens in our lifetime. That's like the good old days, right? Horse and cart days type of thing. But it did, it happened. And we got through it.
Do you know how many people I know just cross their arms and just close their business? I'm done. They didn't even give it a chance, right? They didn't come up with a strategy. They said, you know what, that's it. I'm walking away from my debt. I'm just gonna declare bankruptcy and I'm gonna close my business. And I was like, wow, it was scary because a lot of people were
Yep.
thinking that. A lot of people were thinking that. And initially it took a few months for the money to start flowing in my direction, but I would say I saw the increase in business within 4 to 6 weeks. Like I knew that I was not gonna be
Companies couldn't come to a standstill. The banks couldn't suddenly say, oh, well, we're not a bank anymore, right? They had to adapt. And people had to be set up from home. And you cannot work from home if you don't have a computer. You don't have a computer and a phone. You got to have that security,
Right.
right? As in against threats and things like that. But I think also what you've got there is it was a great opportunity. And I want to be careful how I say this, because I know people lost loved ones, right? So I'm not talking about it from that perspective, but just from a pure business perspective. My business that was it, done. I recruit for the recruitment industry, and what do people do? We're not hiring anymore.
Right.
Okay. And I admit I was pretty shell shocked for a little bit, because I was one of those people that thought, because when we went into a 2-week lockdown, I thought we were going to be back in 2 weeks. Business as normal. This thing will go in 2 weeks. Naivety, right? But at the time I looked at it, I thought, well, what can I do? What can I do? And that's when Elite Global Recruiters was born. That's when I invested in the coaching business. I launched a new business during the pandemic that summer. And I remember people looking at me thinking, you are crazy. You've gone and invested how much money, right? But I just knew this too shall pass. And I could have sat there.
So I think that is a brilliant point, because I think it's, you look at the stock market. When the stock market crashes, that's the time to buy. It's the time to buy. It always recovers. And a lot of people pull their money out, right? So I mean, I can get, if you think you're at the top, pulling it out, but if it's crashing and it's already hit the bottom, don't pull your money out, right?
Yeah.
Put more money in, you'll make more money. And I think the same is true in every crisis, right? In crises are when new businesses are born, innovative businesses that are in stagnant models, who were not prepared or not ready or do not react quickly, suffer or go out of business. But you'll see there's a lot of new businesses after the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
A lot of, I mean, new industries practically, right? So there is always money to be made. It's just, are you insightful enough to, and are you capable enough to take advantage of it?
And you're absolutely right. And as you were saying that, I was thinking, would the younger me have just said, pandemic, oh my God, you've got no sales, but you've got a team, you've got an office to pay for, you've got staff payroll to meet, and what have you. Now's a good time to launch a new business, right? So I don't know if that younger me would have had the confidence to take that risk, because it was a risk.
Right. You just read my mind. It's always a risk. Opening a business is always a risk. Like I don't want to encourage people like, oh, the market's crashing, I'm going to open a business. No, it's a risk, right? You have to understand that it's a gamble. You could lose your money and your time, and you have to be prepared. You have to make good decisions. Because if you don't have a nest egg and you quit your job and to open a business, you're probably going to be in trouble.
But I think you've got to make good decisions, and you've got to make tough decisions. Okay. Now, going back to what you said, people said, no, I'm shutting my business down. That's it, done. If that was a tough decision, thought through based on the information available at the time, and then you made that decision, that's one thing. But if it was like I saw a lot of people knee-jerk reaction, okay, so I think there's that slight difference there, right? Because I didn't suddenly just say, oh my God, I'm going to launch a new business. I looked and thought, if you launch a new business, what would you launch? And I didn't deviate. I did not go from the where my knowledge base was my client base. I just launched a different service to the same client base, so I won't have to go hunting for brand new clients, and so it was a real easier transition. Okay, so when I done it, that was what I looked at. I was like, okay, what can I do? And I was really, really fortunate in the sense that I've got some really amazing clients, and I was able to talk to them and say, okay, this is how I'm thinking of pivoting. Right. So I was fortunate. But the other thing we haven't talked about, and I think is really, really important, and get yourself a coach. Okay.
I
To
definitely want
talk
to do
through.
that.
Yeah. I didn't do that soon enough. I wish I had done that earlier, but again, don't know what I don't know. And coaching wasn't really a thing. There were life coaches. I'm not quite sure. No disrespect to life coaches. I know what they do. I needed business coach, right? So
Right.
one of if I was redoing this, I would get a business coach who understands my area of expertise. Okay, so they understand the industry, and that's what I would do. And the other piece is if you're outgrowing your business coach, change your business coach.
Right. And I think that that's why you have so much success as a coach, because you coach in the recruitment industry. You show people how to set up their own business to become a recruiter. And it's very specific. And you get some people just get a life coach. And I'm not saying life coaches don't work. I mean, they work for a lot of people, but
Mhm.
they satisfy a different need, a different niche.
Yep.
So if you want to become a successful business owner in your industry, find a coach in your industry, right?
Yeah.
If you get a
Yep.
life coach for that, you're going to struggle. I mean, anyone can give you an attaboy and an attagirl. Like, you shouldn't even
Yep.
have to pay for that, right? You can go to mom and dad, or
I was just gonna say, isn't that what mom and dad are for?
right, or your significant other, hopefully, if
Yeah.
you're in a good relationship.
Yeah.
But I think that is, if I had to pound one point into any business owner, if you are going to get a coach, get one in your industry.
Yeah. And you're right, because my clients come to me that want to set up their own staffing agency, right? So great, I know that. My clients that already have a staffing business, they come to me and say, look, we need to grow. So I'll work with the executives, or they'll be like, my team needs training. So I'll do the team training. But the only other piece that I would kind of like, again, just contradict myself on just for a split second, when you're looking for a coach, and it's going to be different stages of your business, why do you need that coach? Okay, and bear with me on this one. During the pandemic, my need from one of the needs I had needing a coach was mindset, right? It was, and I was, as I'm talking to people, I'm talking to, like, I remember this one individual, senior executive. He'd literally just handed his notice in at his previous company. They'd let him go, as in, yeah, great, gives the keys, go and take 2 weeks out, start your job 2 weeks later. So he had done that. The company he's going to had pulled the offer.
Wow.
I remember having this conversation with him, and I remember it was a placement of mine. The client was mine. My client pulled the offer. And I remember talking to this guy on a Friday, Because first I was saying, look, we're going to delay this start. But after a while, they're not delaying it, right? After a couple of weeks. And I remember having to say to him, I don't see this happening, right? I felt sick, right? And he was very, very professional about it and what have you. But I heard his wife burst into tears in the background, right? And then he told me the company his wife worked at, there was something like 20, 30 people. And they were getting rid of people as well. So she, of course, was then worried that there's zero income coming in. So I had to go and get myself a mindset coach at the time to help me navigate my way through that, because we were having multiple conversations like this.
Right.
Right. So that's what I would also say is, as a business, that may be an area that you need support on. And that's where I would go for a mindset coach as opposed to an industry coach.
Right. No, I think that's an excellent point, because I have done similar things. I think in terms of growing your business or starting your business, getting a coach in your industry works. But at some point, like we said earlier, it's about personal growth. So like, what other things do I personally have to overcome? So sometimes you supplement and you do that, and the other coach maybe just
Yep.
focus on that one, right?
Yep. 100%.
Because sorry.
I was going to say, I've had 2 coaches at a time.
Me too.
Right. That mindset piece, because I just, like, when I'm working with my clients, we always talk about mindset, because we all know for the most part what we have to do. Okay. As salespeople, we know we have to generate revenue. Like, just it's basic. You don't generate revenue, there is no business. There's no money coming into the business. Therefore, there is no business, right? We know we got to do it. We know we got to pick up the phone. We know we got to negotiate this deal. We know we got to do this. We got to do that. Why do we not do it? Right? And so when it's not a training skill need, because when you have the skill, you know what you got to do, but you're not doing it, that's where that mindset piece is going to come in.
Right.
So I will sit with a client and I'll be like, let's explore why you're not doing that. Right. I'm working with one company at the moment, and they've got an individual in the business who, all intents and purposes, they need to replace. Right. For a number of different reasons. That one is that individual is not generating any revenue. And I had to say to my client, I had to say to him, what is it that's stopping you from making that decision? Right? Explore that. And in business, we all have that, because we don't want to be hiring and firing people all the time. We want to hire, but we want to hire for growth.
Right.
Right. So it's things like that is where that mindset piece comes in.
I agree, especially if you're in a scarcity mindset, or you're
Yep. Fair point.
Right. And all that stuff comes from our history. There's we're almost done, but there's one more question or point I wanted to bring up for you. So you do some sales and marketing training on LinkedIn, and you have a whole course on that. And so I was wondering if you would give our audience, a little bit of wisdom on LinkedIn, give them a little bit of your secret sauce,
Okay. Yeah.
And
LinkedIn is not instant gratification. It's not Facebook. Okay. So if you're going to build your brand on LinkedIn, okay, especially if you're business to business, you're going to build your brand on LinkedIn. It takes time. It takes time. You've got to be consistent. You've got to look at it, and you've got to look at it and say, how much time am I going to be spending on LinkedIn? And in my case, when I first started, it'd be like 5-10 minutes. Now I'm on LinkedIn all the time, because my audience is there, but secondly, just keeping up, right? And give before you take. A lot of people, and I'm sure you've seen it, Doug, right? You're in mail, you connect with somebody, and suddenly, boom, I'm the expert in this, buy this, buy this, buy that, right? Don't be that person. It's that how you're going to differentiate yourself, right? But if you're going to do LinkedIn, just recognize you may not see a return for 6 months, but I promise you, if you do it consistently, you will. I now, all my, for lack of a better word, leads come via LinkedIn. It's because people know my brand on LinkedIn.
Right.
I don't send people these the connection requests, buy this. I just don't do it because I don't like it being done to me, so I don't do it. Okay. But you've seen, I'll host free live sessions on that, where I'm bringing in a guest of different things, and we're talking about just freely educating, giving my time, giving my expertise. So it takes time. And I know that's not the answer a lot of people want to hear. You've got to be consistent with it. It's not Facebook. Identify who your target audience is. So, and I know we're going to go sidetrack here, but literally any business, any sales, you have your top 50 clients.
Right.
Right? Top 50 clients, top 25 clients, help make it top 10, right? Break it down, find out who your contacts, the decision makers there are, find out who the influencers are there, then go and find them on LinkedIn. What are they talking about? What are the problems they are talking about? Solve that problem. That's how you're going to build that relationship. That's how you're going to get them into your ecosystem.
Right.
Right.
I think that is a brilliant point. I think the larger your ask in terms of dollar amount, the longer it takes to build that relationship, right?
For sure.
To get someone to jump. And I think that only makes sense.
Sure. And not only that, we all, when we hear a name, we tend to go and Google it, right?
Right.
We would like, if we don't know, we're like, oh, who's Suki? You go to Google, right? Usually one of the top 2 or 3 that pops up is the person's LinkedIn or the LinkedIn profile for somebody with that name. Right? So now your audience is going, your client is going to LinkedIn to check you out. And if you're a dead profile, or you're talking about, I don't know, what you had for lunch. Now, unless you are in that food industry, fitness industry, they don't care. So people forget that when they're selling, especially in that corporate world. I always go to LinkedIn. Anyone that rings me, first place I go and check them out. And sometimes I'll be on the phone. I'll be like, hold on, how do I spell your name?
Right.
And I'll look them up on LinkedIn as we're talking.
This is all really good points. All right, so I'm going to bring it to a close here. So if anyone wants more information about Suki, we're going to have her email address and her URLs at the base of this video. We'll include your course on LinkedIn as well.
Sure.
And thank you so much for being here. You definitely brought the thunder.
Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome.
See you later.